Hi, I'm Logan T. Smith for Opinion Subject to Change, here to talk about the Star Wars Sequel Trilogy. Now, I don't have a script or anything here, I haven't really planned this, but I'm just going to say a few of the things that I think made the Star Wars Sequel Trilogy terrible. Now, the first thing is Star Wars Episode 7. Everything about it is terrible. So, if you disagree, well, here's the start. Now, Episode 7, as a standalone movie, would be fine. It's a decent story, it's got decent characters, it's okay. But as part of the Star Wars saga, it's terrible. Because it doesn't bring anything new to the table, and it sets the world back to where it was in the very first movie in 1977. So, the Empire is big and strong, the Rebellion is small and weak, and you need a Force user to come and rescue it and blow up a Death Star. So, what I mean, I know this is a complaint that lots of people have had. I'm not saying that I'm going to bring anything new today, but it makes it so that everything that's happened is like it never happened. It's like they're trying to reboot Star Wars, which I don't like. But even if they were going to reboot Star Wars, you'd want to at least make it a little bit different, don't you think? Anyway, so they make this new movie that's pretty much the same as the very first movie, except shinier, newer looking, different kind of humor in it. And it just, for someone who's watched all the Star Wars movies a lot, who's read a number of the Expanded Universe novels, I haven't read them all, but I've read a fair number of them. It was so disappointing. That movie was such a massive disappointment. And I think what happened is it set the trilogy off on a really bad start. Because where do you go from episode 4? Well, you go to episode 5. But you have, instead of Obi-Wan and Luke, you have Rey and nobody. So you don't have the setup that you need to really make this work right. Besides the fact, one of the things that I found actually incredibly stupid in episode 7 is the map thing where they're trying to figure out where Luke is, and they have most of the map, but they're missing a little bit. Like, guys, this is space. You have the galaxy charted. You don't need a map with a dotted line from one point to another point to figure it out. You just need the place and sort of the surrounding a little bit, and then you can go there and find them. You can scan for life signs, you know. Besides which, Luke wasn't hiding in a secret place. He was hiding in a place that would have been in the records of the Jedi, which perhaps most of the people didn't have, but Luke had found it. Anyways, that may be a different argument that may be explained somewhere that I don't know. But a map with a dotted line, come on, give me a break. Anyways, so they make this movie. It's fine standalone, bad as far as part of the Star Wars universe. It doesn't bring anything new to the table. And I didn't like it. Then you have The Last Jedi, which destroys what happened in episode 7. It goes against episode 7. Now, when I first watched episode 8, I quite liked it because I hated episode 7. And so episode 8, tearing down what happened in episode 7, I was quite a fan of that. But it has a number of major issues. Star Wars, which has a long history of very poor military strategy, The Last Jedi has the worst military strategy in it of all time. It is so bad. And the submarine chase where they're just floating in space and the rebels don't have enough fuel, but the Empire does. So why don't they just make a short hyperspace jump to in front of the rebels with some of the fleet? It doesn't take very long to do a hyperspace jump, and then you're in front of them and behind them, and you just blow them up. Like, come on, guys. Anyways, and then in The Last Jedi, they force themselves into a very tight timeline where that movie has to take place, the entire movie has to take place over just a few days. In fact, I think it takes place in under 3 days. The whole movie, which forces Rey's training period to be extremely short. Now, this is a period which in Empire Strikes Back, we don't get a clear idea in those movies of how long Luke was on Dagobah. But the estimates are around 3 months. Okay, so Luke was training for 3 months, and he comes out from that and fails to defeat Darth Vader. Rey is training for less than 3 days and comes out and is able to lift 100 rocks at once and everything like that and conquers the day. But those aren't the biggest problems. The biggest problem with The Last Jedi is Rey's interaction with the dark side of the Force. So, she goes to the dark side cave, which we know is the dark side cave because Luke already told us it's the dark side cave. And so she goes there, and the dark side shows her nothing. The dark side shows her that it has nothing. It has no power. It has nothing to offer her. The dark side has nothing to offer Rey. Now, this could have been very clever, because this could have been the devil telling Rey that the devil does not exist. The dark side could have been telling Rey that there is no dark side. You don't need to fear embracing the dark side, because there is no dark side to embrace. Now, this, in my personal opinion, could have been a great story point, because it would have taken the Force in a way that would have been an interesting new way to go for the Star Wars movies without destroying the foundations of what the Force is and how it operates. Because Rey then, not fearing the dark side, having learned that the dark side doesn't exist, would have embraced the dark side and turned to the dark side. And then, in Episode 9, we could have had this interesting interaction between Rey and Kylo Ren, where Kylo Ren in Episode 7 is being pulled towards the light side, and Rey is being pulled toward the dark side, and they could cross. And Kylo Ren could be further on the light side than Rey is, and then you'd have a different interaction there, where potentially Kylo Ren could either help Rey return to the light side, or actually in the end defeat Rey and have her be eliminated. And you wouldn't even have to worry about Palpatine and all that other nonsense. Episode 9 ends up coming out, and they decide they don't like Episode 7, and they create this complete nonsensical movie, which is just full of garbage, doesn't make a lot of sense, and just craps on all of Star Wars history, including the previous 2 movies that they had just made. So ultimately, what it comes down to, the biggest error, and I think everybody who's really thought about this knows this, the biggest problem with the sequel trilogy is that they didn't have someone with a plan. There was no one person or a group of people that were like, this is the vision of the sequel trilogy. This is how it goes. These are the main plot points. This is what needs to happen. This is where we're flexible. This is where we're starting. This is where we're ending. And this is where we need to figure out the stuff in between. There was obviously nobody that was doing that. It's so clear when you watch them that that's not what happened. They made 3 movies. They're all separate from each other. They kind of connect together, and they have the same characters in them. But they are not a cohesive story in any way. And so it's all very disappointing. Now, I don't know how things would have been different had George Lucas remained involved. Obviously, the story would have been different. because George Lucas had a vision for Star Wars. Now, there can be some debate over how good of a director he is, or how good of a writer he is, and how good of writing dialogue he is. Now, I like all of the 6 original Star Wars movies. The 3 original, the 3 prequels, I like all of them. Now, I don't like any of the prequels as much as I like the original trilogy. And George Lucas didn't want to direct the prequel trilogy. He tried to get other people to do it, but nobody would do it. Anyways, I don't think George Lucas was the right choice to direct those movies. But George Lucas was the right person to have the vision for the story. And I can't help but think, had Disney kept him involved, he could have been the vision for the story. Even if Kathleen Kennedy had a vision for the story and she just stuck with it, I'm sure the trilogy would have been better. It is hard to imagine a trilogy worse than the sequel trilogy. Because how could it be worse? Like, you could make just each individual movie just terrible, okay? Independently, right? You could, but once you have the infrastructure that creates blockbuster movies, can you imagine a trilogy of blockbuster movies that is worse? As a cohesive trilogy, is there anything worse? They start off with episode 7, which has less originality than the Fast and Furious 7. They come in with episode 8, which just destroys everything that episode 7 set up, completely ignores major plot points, literally tells to let the past die on other things, takes the Force and just goes, I don't really like the way the Force works. Well, let's do something else. And then episode 9 comes along and is like, well, let's just pretend episode 7 didn't really happen, except what we really can't ignore. And then let's just come up with this other thing with Palpatine and a bunch of nonsense. Now, I don't have a problem with Palpatine being in the trilogy at all. I mean, in fact, I thought from episode 7 that Palpatine was planned to be in the trilogy all along. But they needed to have more foundation for that. If Palpatine was going to be in episode 9, hints of him in episode 7, much more implications of the Emperor in episode 8. And then episode 9, a better implementation of what's going on. Anyways, I could just ramble on about this for a very long time. I hate the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. It's terrible. It has very few redeeming qualities. I'm sure lots of people like it. But when you stand back in the context of Star Wars and look at that trilogy, it is so sad. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Thank you for your support. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know. Anyways, thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.